Okay, so first I'm going to tell you a little about my story, and then talk about some of the major hurdles, and then end with some specific solutions that I think could be implemented at the university level, and also in support, career support for early career scientists kind of entering at this science policy interface or interdisciplinary type of work. I came from the engineering consulting world, where the focus is really on design and solutions. So, at some point I got frustrated because I wasn't able to ask and answer enough science questions. It was more about the bottom line and just getting the deliverable out there to the clients. So I decided I wanted to go back to school, and I purposely pursued atmospheric sciences. I wanted that quantitative physical background, but I'm still very interested in solutions and use-based type science. But I found, or use-inspired science. I found out really quickly that, especially in our department at University of Arizona Atmospheric Sciences, it's pretty disciplinary work in a field that could be very interdisciplinary, and that while the research I was doing on global climate model assessment was really interesting, there was no clear pathway for it to be used ever. And it would just get lost in scientific journals, and no intended use. Didn't start with someone's question and then proceed to answering that question. The research question really only mattered to a very, very small community of scientists. So that made me mad. It wasn't a fulfilling type of place to be in. So my first attempt at trying to connect my science skill set to the decision-making world was to reach out outside of my department to get involved in other things, because for me there wasn't a clear path towards interdisciplinary research. I didn't know where to go. So I found the university's Green Fund Committee, which was a really cool experience, actually. It's a board of 10 students that manage a fund of $400,000 for campus sustainability projects. So we were involved in reviewing grants for feasibility, their budgets for impact, and then awarding those grants and monitoring previously funded projects and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of towards where I wanted to go, but was still really unhappy in the research aspect of my graduate school life. So I then pursued some courses. I took a course called Economic Analysis of Environmental and Water Policy, which was great. And then that led me to Dan's course that he teaches called Connecting Science and Decision Making, and I was hooked. So I basically harassed Dan after that, and the stars aligned, and he decided to fund me, and my research was pushed in more towards an interdisciplinary, use-inspired type direction. But I have to say that, well, let me finish by saying I got involved. The funding comes from the Southwest RISA, and I got involved in. I thought that was a timer. I was like, oh God. I got involved in research at the Science Policy Interface there, in my case, which meant working directly with the energy utility in Southern Arizona, doing a climate vulnerability assessment with them, and creating knowledge specifically relevant to their business needs and priorities, which was great. But I have to say that there was no real clear pathway for me to get involved in that type of work, and that really I think it was pretty lucky, really just luck that the type of work I was interested in doing, Dan was interested in, and that there was also some sort of money. So I don't think that's a viable route for many students. I kind of just lucked into that. So that was one of the hurdles that somehow I managed to bypass. So I think on campus, we have the Center for Climate Adaptations and Solutions that Kathy runs, and they do a lot of talks aimed at fostering collaborations and clarifying pathways for students. But I think there's a couple of solutions at the university level that could really help students like me. And one would be creating a kind of engagement guide, a science policy interface engagement guide. So this exists on campus for green activities. We have a green engagement guide. And if there's enough science policy type things to get involved in, it'd be good to have a guide online that students could go see what all exists and who do I contact, how do I get involved, what's the pathway. The other thing I sort of thought up, and I don't really know how this would work, for interdisciplinary stuff is some central space for faculty to post their multidisciplinary type ideas. So if they know that they don't have the expertise and they would like to collaborate with other departments, and I know my boss has a bunch of ideas like this, but he never ends up reaching out. So maybe there could be some sort of boundary spanner involved in managing this type of thing, connecting the dots, and then facilitating introductions and meetings so that communication between, for example, social sciences and physical sciences could be successful, and we could bring more social sciences and applied things into the mix. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is increasing early career support. No, don't die. Okay, and I'm talking about gaining employment for a reasonable salary, not just a short, one-year program where I don't get benefits and I have to eat ramen noodles still. So the clearest...
Hey, I'm hamstrung on the pay scale.
The clearest example forward for somebody like me would either be continuing work with a RISA, I think, or getting involved in any of these interdisciplinary programs like the AAAS fellowship or the PACE program. And I'm going to talk about the PACE program because that's what I have the most experience with since I just applied this year. And what that is, it's a UCAR program that brings together a decision-making partner or body, which usually ends up being some sort of governmental organization. Like, for example, this year it was the USGS, and a climate science partner. And then this is going to be confusing to explain. So, for example, this year it was University of Miami on the climate science physical side and Florida Atlantic University on the social sciences side. So the climate science partner is supposed to be kind of the support system for the student that actually ends up being involved in these projects. So the decision-making partner defines the questions that they want help answering. There's a support system set up for the student that ends up getting this job through the climate science partner. And it's funded by the decision-making body. Although the student that is the fellow is actually an employee of UCAR, so they get health insurance and benefits, all that good stuff. I think it's a really good way to fund this type of interdisciplinary research, and you're not just throwing a student out there. You have the support system. So I think this could be expanded. I mean, every year it's only 1 or 2 fellowships, and I don't get that. I think it could be, infinite number of fellowships if there isn't enough time and money for the review boards to pick these students. So that would be one suggestion, to expand a program like that. But also, they have a focus on really academic type stuff still, publication. I think a similar type program could be started that is focused more on practitioner type area, where it would be, the funding mechanism would be the same, and the support system would be similar. But instead of focusing on on the publications still, really focusing on answering questions, helping to make decisions, just, discovering a range of solutions and that kind of thing. So, done.
Are there any quick follow-up questions?
So my supposition is that 10 years from now, climate adaptation work is mainstream, there's a huge demand for it, and the vast majority of it is actually done by consultants. So that's my sort of bold premise, prediction. So my question actually is, if the consulting firm that you'd worked for had a climate gal position, would you have stayed?
No, not at that point, because I mean, maybe. It would have been tempting to get involved in that, but knowing the environment, I think I still would have run into the same problems of not being able to ask enough questions. Why do we use a certain set of mathematical equations for surface water budgeting than others that are valid? Which method is the best? There was just no time to answer that, and I think I probably would have still been like, this is garbage. I don't feel confident about,
So maybe the follow-on is if 10 years from now there really are climate adaptation folks doing good quality work with accreditation and established guidelines in the consulting realm, would that be attractive to you?
yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, Caitlin, and then we'll continue.
Okay, so I just have a comment, and I'm glad you raised the PACE program, because I think it is a really interesting model of federal agencies supporting fellows, and then the private sector being a host and supporting that piece. And it would be interesting too to hear maybe from some of the other perspectives of, at some point, could be offline with me, but some of the others in the room, either from other federal agencies or even stakeholders, to see whether this kind of model could be expanded in thinking about more career paths in this regard.
Yeah, I mean, one other quick thing that I wanted to say was, it's clear to me that there's a ton of students interested in this type of work, so there's a ton of supply. And listening to the city planners and stuff, there also seems to be a ton of demand. But the connection between supply and demand just isn't there. And so these types of programs, like PACE, expanding that kind of thing, and also into the practitioner PACE, I think could be a really good solution to that kind of thing.